Welcome to A Matter of Perspective. I'm Judge Derwin Webb coming to you from SuperChef on Bardstown Road here in Louisville, Kentucky. I have my guest here today, my man, Darnell Ferguson, SuperChef. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Feels good to be in the hot seat.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm wearing a red jacket. This is the closest thing I have to a cape. I knew I was going to be with SuperChef today, so I'm dressed just for you today.
That's just funny. I picked out a burgundy shirt. I call it burgundy. Mine was I was going to wear today, but I was like, let me be a little more proactive with my clothes I got on today.
Man, you have a very interesting story, and we're here at your location here. I know you have another store in Alabama. I know you have another store also in Ohio as well. Tell me, what made you get started in cooking?
Oh, man. I liked cooking enough when I was in high school. For me, I didn't know what I was going to do in life. It started to get scary because if it wasn't sports, that's all I knew my whole life was sports. As really almost all any of us knew where I was from was sports. So when I realized that I was only average, I started to worry what I was going to do the rest of my life. You know, I'm a real honest person. I wasn't no Randy Moss. You know, I was more like, I could have been something, but I don't know.
Okay, what kind of sports are we talking about?
Football. It was all football. I'm from Ohio, so we only play football usually.
Okay, what part of Ohio?
Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
Yep,
So
I'm
grew
a
up
Buckeye. I'm the Ohio State.
Ohio State, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Nothing against the Cards. You know what I'm saying? I root for them. I'm here. You know what I'm saying? But I'm a Buckeye by heart. So when I was in the 10th grade going into 11th, I had a decision to make. I was like, I want to go to vocational school. I want to do anything I could do not to have to go to high school that much. And they had one for culinary arts. And I'd already liked Emerald a whole lot. So I was like, the least I'm going to get to do is, at worst come to worst, I'm going to eat really good at lunchtime. Okay. If I don't like it, I can't lose here. Like, I'm going to eat good. There's no losses for me. So therefore, I ended up going to vocational school in my 11th, 12th grade year. So I only went to high school for about 2 hours. Okay. And then I went to school to be a chef for the rest of the day. Okay. And that was where it all started for me at. And to be honest with you, it was like, I didn't know I would be a chef for the rest of my life. I just knew that I liked cooking. I did it on the weekends with my cousins, but it's so crazy when I think about it because we didn't really cook nothing. We was like putting cheddar cheese on cereal. Like, you know what I'm saying? Warming up pizza from the night before. Like, now I look about it, we actually didn't cook anything. His mom was smart. She didn't give us no pots and pans. But like, that's where this grew from, man. I was interested in it. And then after seeing the Food Network for the first time and seeing Emerald on TV and his whole swag with the Emerald Live, I was like, I like this. Like, I'm gonna see if I could do something with it.
Okay, so decision you make at early age that you're going to be a chef.
Well, at least I was gonna start cooking.
You're gonna start cooking.
Yeah.
Okay. When did you decide that you could be an actual chef?
It was like my first month and a half in vocational school. Okay. It didn't take me very long. My whole life I had been waiting for somebody to tell me I was great at something. You know what I'm saying? Football, I'd never heard it before. You know what I'm saying? Even though I was really good, there were like people who went D1. They were just like so much above me in the athletics. I mean, I was really small my whole life too. I didn't get big until I switched high schools. Okay. And so it was like, I remember like yesterday, the teacher, she was like, let's do knife skills today. And she gave me a potato and a knife. And I'm thinking like, why'd she give me a knife for? She don't even know if I could use it. But she gave me this huge chef's knife. And she gave me a little board that shows you every knife cut you're supposed to do. It's the exact size of everything and shows you everything. And I remember she said, I want you to make these shapes out of this potato. And when she came back, I had every single shape down pat. And she was like, how long have you been doing this? Remember, she didn't know me that well. I just started school. She said, how long have you been doing this for? Because most people who went there had already been cooking. I was like, this is my first time ever touching a knife. And she's like, that's crazy. It's like, you cut like somebody who's been doing it for 30 years. I remember the exact year she said and everything. She's like, you cut like you've been doing this for 30 years. And I was like, I didn't know that. You know, so she's like, we're gonna put you on the competition teams. She's like, you're great at this. She's like, we're gonna make sure that you are on our competition teams because with these kind of nice skills, you're gonna go real far.
Okay, what year was this?
This is my 11th grade year in high school.
Okay, I don't know too many people that went to vocational school, so describe what the vocational school was like. You know, a lot of people I know grew up in public schools. I have a few friends who went to a private school. I've never had anybody go to vocational school, so talk to me about
So
that.
at vocational school, you got an option. Well, no matter what you're going for, what age you're at, you either go in the mornings or you go at lunchtime. I was younger in 11th grade, so I went at lunchtime. So you go to high school in the mornings, and then a bus comes to get you, or you drive to the other school if you're driving, and you go to another school for the rest of the day. And you only do that trade. You don't do nothing else. So for the rest of my day, all I did was learn culinary arts. And they had the same professions there for like cosmetology was there, auto body mechanics was there, computer engineering was there. If you want to be a fashion designer, that was at our trade school too. So the trade school had all these plumbing, electricians, all these different trades that you wanted to be that weren't college driven, were inside of trade schools. So that was what that's what it really was. It's just a trade school, but it was called vocational school.
Right.
And it just really honed in on what you wanted to be after school.
Okay, so you graduate from that.
Yep, and high school.
Okay, so you decide to go to culinary school.
Yep,
okay.
Sullivan.
Okay, you went to Sullivan. So you moved to Louisville, you decided to go to Sullivan.
Yep.
Tell me about that.
So Sullivan recruited us. Because I went to vocational school, the school I went to, you know, you do competitions all the time. That's what you do. You go to these competitions, you go against other schools. So Sullivan recruited us from a vocational school. And I remember I had the worst visit of my life coming here. This was the worst city I've ever seen in my life on my visit. But also it was pouring down raining. So, you know, as an 18-year-old, about to be 18-year-old, you're like, oh, this is horrible. Like, you didn't get to see nothing. I was like,
right.
And then Sullivan was just as big my high school was bigger than Sullivan. So I'm like, this ain't what I thought about college. You know, I'm thinking of like big campuses and everything like that. So I was like, this isn't even an option for me. But then when I got back home, schools became less of an option because of my grades I had, my 9th and 10th grade year. So therefore, I had to start thinking like, wow, like I may not even be, even though I switched my whole life around my 11th and 12th grade year when I switched schools, I didn't erase what I did my 9th and 10th grade year, so I didn't even think I would get into school. And it wasn't until Sullivan was really like, hey, we have no one in your family who could sign for financial aid. Like nobody I knew had enough credit that they could sign a loan for me. My grades weren't enough to get all these scholarships because of what I did my 9th and 10th grade year. So I'm like, how am I going to go to school anywhere? And then Sullivan really worked with me and was like, hey, we'll give you a lot of grant money if you come to school at nighttime for us.
Okay. And
I was like, okay, that sounds good. Until I got here and I stayed in dorms, but all my roommates went to school in the morning. I went to work in the morning, and everybody else when they came home, I went to work. I went to school, so it was different for me because I was in class with people my age now, like 33 to that 50-year-old age is who I'm in class. So I'm like, this is just horrible. I didn't like school at all. I didn't like nothing about college until I got to day school. And once I switched over and went to day school because I had to have enough credits in order for them to transfer me over to day school, then it started to look good for me. But it was cool, man. I loved Sullivan. That's where I really learned to start using things. Like I started squeezing the melon in a sense. I got everything that Sullivan could give me out of him while I was there. Like they took me to the Olympics.
I was going to ask you about that.
I had to go to the governor's mansion. Like they had to take me everywhere they went. I went. I was not the person who sat back and was just going to let events happen and let things happen that I wasn't a part of.
Now, tell me about the Olympics because, you know, I'm a former athlete myself. I did football, basketball, track, and I said at some point I was going to be at the Olympics. You got a chance to go there and be a chef there. So tell us about that experience. Now, first of all, let me say this. You're a pretty big guy. I'm pretty sure that once you got there, they thought you were one of the athletes.
100%. They definitely did. And that's what we used to our advantage the most is because I told them I was Carmelo Anthony's little brother. Like, literally. And no one ever questioned it because they don't know who his brother is. Who Googles his brother at that time?
So go ahead.
And this is in 2008. So we were in the Beijing Olympics in China. We were there for about 3 months. And I worked in the USA House. Some people worked in the High Performance Center where they actually ate at. I cooked in the place where the U.S. delegation, corporate sponsors, and celebrities came to. So I was like in the fun house. And it was life-changing for me. Without that experience, none of this stuff comes after. Because I don't think I could develop the work ethic I needed here.
Okay.
Like, what I seen in China changed my whole view on work. Everything was changed. Like, I had never seen people who would love to work so much. You know what I'm saying? I had never seen chefs who are at the highest level. Like these chefs, all they do is Wimbledon, Super Bowls, AT&T events. Like they only do big events.
That's all they do?
That's all they do. Okay. I said, what do you do when you ain't there? He's like, I usually go on the island somewhere and we'll chill to our next event. I'm like, so you just go on the island until your next event and then you fly back? He's like, yep, that's what we do. I was like, that's a life to have. You know, like, I didn't even know that was possible. But what I seen was these chefs who were all the way up here, I seen them work 20 hours a day, not complain one time. I seen them have the same energy all day. I never seen them one time complain about anything. And it developed something to me that by the time I got back to the States, they couldn't take out of me no more. So my motor is super high. Like even today people ask me, how can you do so much stuff? Well, I don't even think about it like that. You know, like I'm always thankful that I get to do what I do. But being around those chefs who could have had every reason to be like, oh, I don't need to be doing this, you could do this for me. And to see them lead by example and to see them have so much energy for it just made that part of my DNA. And I was so impressionable at that young age. I wasn't even 21 when I went to the Olympics. So I was so impressionable that what they did stuck with me forever. And I never changed from that kind of person I was then as far as working goes. But it was crazy. They never seen, like, you don't know that in China, they don't see Americans like we see Chinese. You know, like it's not the same. Like they don't see someone who looks like me on a daily basis.
Right.
So therefore it's such a different feeling. Like you take so many pictures, so many people just want to be around you because they don't see you that often. So it was like, I was just shocked is the better word to say.
Right. So you take that experience and you decide you come back to the United States.
Yep.
And you decide at that point you are going to open up your own restaurant, or?
Well, I thought I was going to be a chef in Vegas for a while. Okay. Before I left to go to the Olympics, my mom and them already took me to Vegas to fill out like apartment applications. Mm-hmm. So I thought that I was going to come back from China, graduate college like I was supposed to, which I did, and then just go straight to Vegas and get a job there. And I wanted to be a private chef. Never wanted to be in restaurants. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to be a private chef, but I figured out I need to work in around some big money first. That way I can get close to people. Mm-hmm. And by the time I got back from China, that was when the economy went from here all the way down while I was overseas. So Vegas went from a 0% unemployment rate to like a 13, which means like hundreds or thousands of chefs lost their jobs. I was like, probably not the best time for me. Just graduated from college to try to go down there and make a name for myself. So I just stayed here more by force than by choice.
Okay, so you decide to stay here. Mm-hmm. So what's your plan? Okay, you go to the Olympics, you see this experience, and you think that you're going to mimic this experience back in the United States.
Yes.
You come back, economy crashes. What's your plan at that point?
Well, see, the thing I didn't say is before I left, so I got through college by selling drugs. Okay. That was my
tell me, I was going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
But tell me about that, because I know that you have a very interesting story.
Yeah.
A very success story. Mm-hmm. But people don't realize a lot of times with success, there are some failures along the way. And I wouldn't exactly call them failures, but trained experiences.
Yeah.
Tell me about your trained experience.
Well, they were badly trained. But, and to finish you off there, so when I had left, I was already doing that. Mm-hmm. So I left everything and left people in charge. When I got back, I just picked up where I left off because I was graduating from college. Like, you know what? I need a break. Mm-hmm. I just got back from the Olympics. I'm going to take some time off and just enjoy being 20 years old. And that was just, I'm not a break kind of person. If I break, I may lose 3-4 years of my life off that 1 month break. Mm-hmm. So therefore, that's when I started getting arrested, and that's where the story starts to get a little airy at, is because I worked when I first got to college. But I don't know, man, I'm just not, I'm okay with saying this, I'm not that smart that I can work a full-time job and go to college. Mm-hmm. I needed to be able to make some money because my mom couldn't send me enough money. Mm-hmm. $20 here and there isn't enough for a college student. So therefore, I figured I'd do it myself. And that was where it spiraled into like a lifestyle. And it really didn't get better until it was forced to get better. Okay,
so you say it spiraled into a lifestyle. Tell me about the lifestyle.
Yeah, you know, like I literally had became a drug dealer. Like I didn't even try to. I just was like, it came available, and then I want to take a break, and before you know it, like that's my life. Like that's what I'm doing now. And it wasn't until, I think it was like, I got locked up like 6 times. I stopped counting because I kept getting locked up, and it was like in a 2-month period. Mm-hmm. And I was like, something's up. Like, why am I keep getting locked up? Like, but they were already looking at me. Mm-hmm. So the last time when they had raided my house, I was at the movie theater, and I got a phone call from a roommate. He said, hey, you need to come home. And I'm like, why do I need to come home? He was like, well, he gave the phone to the officer. He's like, you need to come home right now, or you're going to be a fugitive on the run. We're at your house right now. We know you're at the movie theater, so you might as well just come home. So I get in my car, and obviously I don't go home. I started going in a different direction to go to Ohio. But they pulled me over on Taylorsville Road in J-Town. I was like, aren't you supposed to be going the other direction? So they follow me to my house now. I get to my house, and I'm like, what is going on here? There's literally 50 cop cars outside of the apartment complexes. My friends had came over just to see me. That was bad timing for them. So they were inside, like they were like, I don't know, man, we didn't tell them nothing. I'm like, this is not how I thought my life was gonna go. So I'm in jail, and I thought to myself, I said, you've become everything that they told you not to become in elementary school. You know how they used to do the DARE program? That was big where I was from. And you know, they talk about the kids in the system, you can't get out the system. And I remember being in jail, and I was like, I just started looking at myself, because the people who register you in, or whatever it's called, intake you in, they all knew me by first name. They didn't even have to, they just knew me at that point, because I've been getting locked up so much. I'm like, they know my name. The person bringing us the food knows who I am. I was like, everybody in here, this ain't the place I want to be known. You know, and I was like, whatever happens from this day going forward, I was like, I'm never going to do what I've been doing so far. I was like, I'll be homeless on the streets. I will do whatever I have to do, but I'm never coming back to here. Never coming back here again. So I made that decision while I was in jail. And when I got out,
enough was enough at that point.
And enough was enough, because I just came from the Olympics. Like, why am I like getting locked up off of this stuff when I obviously have the potential to be really, really good at something else? So when I got out, I just started looking for jobs, and then that's when my apartment complex evicted us for obvious reasons. And was really just trying to find somewhere to live, man. And I had a friend of mine's who was like a brother. He was a bad brother, and he knows who he is. he's my guy though. But he used to let me stay at his house, and me, I think it was my girlfriend at the time, him, his girlfriend, his brother, his girlfriend, and 2 pit bulls were all staying in this 1-bedroom apartment. And
one-bedroom apartment.
1-bedroom apartment.
Not 3-bedroom.
No. They had a bed in the living room that sometimes we could stay on. They had a bed in their room, but it was literally 6 of us and 2 pit bulls in a 1-bedroom apartment. And then I got into it with his brother and his girl one day. I tried to come back and stay, and he was like, "Nah, you can't come in here." And so they started fighting at the door. I'm like, "I'm out of here, man. Like, this ain't worth it for me. I'll sleep in my car." You know what I'm saying? And that's when I started that process. I was like, man, I need to get myself together. Like, everything I'm doing has got me in this situation.
Right.
Like, and I was just talking to somebody about this at the barbershop before I got here, man. It's like, I kept saying to myself, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I got myself in this situation, and I don't know how I got here. So I need to figure out a whole different life for me. Like, I need to just scratch everything I know about life, and I need to figure out, what am I doing wrong? And that's when I got into church. Because I was like, something got to be better than this, man, because I'm stressed out. I'm ready to fight every day. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm always ready to fight somebody if they say something I don't like. You know, I'm like, this can't be healthy. Like, I'm miserable. Like, I'm literally telling myself, like, I'm so tired of being like this, man. Right. About to fight my boss, like, everyone. And I went into the church, and actually my boss at the time, I asked him, I said,
quick question.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to this point? Because, okay, you're in Beijing, you come back, you get locked up for the first time, but you said it was 6 times.
Yeah.
So you say enough is enough, and then you go into a situation where you become basically homeless. At what point did you turn your life to Christ at that point?
I would say before I got homeless, when the guy who I worked for, the last job I had, that's literally the last job I had, and he told me the church to go to. He fired me listen, this guy fired me from there, even though he took me from another restaurant to come work for him. So he knew that was the only income I had in. But this is also the same guy who taught me about church. And he told me to go to this church. I went there, just bawled out my first time in church. I had never really been to church before. I knew at that point I was 24. I never knew who God was, didn't know nothing about him. Didn't know who Jesus was. I thought like that was a folklore. Like, you know how Jack and the Beanstalk is? Like, I thought that's who Jesus was, like a folklore people talked about. That's how disconnected I was from everything. And I remember the first day I was in church, and everything he said was for me. And I just started crying like a baby inside the church. And from there, I used to go up twice a week. And I started changing my life around. First I started to listen, and then I started to do it. And that's when everything just started to change for me, man. And it was really this guy who got me into church, my boss. When he fired me, when I was going in, like, I was on the up and up now. I started to do right, and I went to apologize to him one day. I was like, man, I'm sorry for how I've been acting towards you. He's like, oh, that's okay, you're fired. I'm sorry, I can't use you no more. In the middle of my apology.
Wow.
In the middle of it, he cuts me off. Literally, I'll tell you how it worked out for me in life with him. But he literally was like, I can't use you no more. I'm sorry, you got to go. I'm like, okay, well, I was just apologizing to you for how I'd been before. Granted, I'd already been in church for 2 weeks now, and he had already had enough for me. And I remember going to my car crying. I started crying all the time. You know what I'm saying? Because the other option for me was to be aggressive. So I just used to cry. And I remember going to my car and crying on my way home. Getting on my way home, I was like, you know what, God, this didn't work out like you said it would work out for me. But I was like, I ain't got nothing else, so I'm gonna keep going on this path with you. And later on down the line, I started doing those pop-up restaurants, and he's the second person to ask me to come do a pop-up in his restaurant and help his restaurant out. So, and that's how God worked everything out in full circle for me with him. And we became great friends, but I needed him to fire me in order for me to get rid of everything that wasn't for me. Right. You know, and that's one thing I had to learn, is that sometimes I had to be stripped of everything. Like, I didn't know nothing. Like, when I tell you, only thing I knew was what I learned in the hood. That's it. Like, there was no one there was no mentors for me growing up. There was no one who came beside me growing up and gave me that advice to be like, you know what, this is how you need to do it. Besides the guys on the street.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's a whole different conversation. But I never had any of that stuff. No one ever told me nothing.
Right.
So it was like once I learned about like who I was and how I was created, it had been what I was looking for my whole life. I always thought I was special, even though I wasn't as physically attractive as everyone else. I always felt like I was still a special person.
Right.
Granted, God made me more physically attractive the older I got. You know what I'm saying? If I'd have known it would work out like that, I'd have waited a little more patiently. But my whole life, I was never that guy. Like, you know how it is? Like, a lot of people, that's why people can relate to me, because there's more people who went through a lot of life just in the middle, never being celebrated, never really having those big aha moments to where everyone's like, yeah, like, but just wanted something more. That's the people I relate to, because what we're looking for is available. You know what I'm saying? But it does come with us sometimes understanding what we've been doing has been giving us the same outcome that we don't want.
Right.
So I just scrapped everything. I scrapped my way of thinking. I scrapped how I deal with things. And I heard somebody tell me one day, he said, just because you were raised to think a certain way doesn't mean you're supposed to think that way as an adult. And I took everything from my childhood to my adulthood. And that's why I see when I talk to people nowadays, they have that same that mentality that you had to have in order to make it out your neighborhood. You have that same mentality at work now. That same mentality with your spouse. And it was like, you can let go of that stuff. And now you're in a new season, learn now what you need to do to get to the next season. And that was what was hard for me.
Well, I know you own more than one restaurant.
Yes.
But there's nothing like the first.
Yeah.
Tell me about when you first opened up that restaurant.
The first one was the worst one because I was embarrassed. I was really embarrassed because we started off in pop-ups. And I came from a very high-end culinary experience as far as career go. And all my friends did too. So therefore, I was in the back of a gyro store doing our SuperChef's breakfast while they were closed. And I was so embarrassed that I would never tell nobody I owned the restaurant. If people came in, they didn't know it was me because I didn't want that humiliation. Like, my friends is at all these nice hotels and restaurants being chefs, and then I'm in the back of a gyro place making breakfast. And I'm like, how did I get this pull in life? But I had started to not think like that. I started to be like, you know what? I'm going to work with the best I have. And then if you could do the best of what you got, you're going to get more later on.
Right. Okay, so people are starting to know who you are.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to know, how'd you get the name SuperChef?
SuperChef?
Yeah.
Oh, man. It was given to me. So people always think I named myself SuperChef. I called myself SuperChef. But it was in the kitchen. I was out there. It used to be a restaurant called Maker's Mark on 4th Street. Now I think it's Bourbon Raw, maybe. And there was a chef. I was just a line cook at the time. There was a chef who was, he was so proud of himself. And he got on the line next to me, and I just buried him. You know what I'm saying? I've always been really good at cooking. So he just couldn't keep up with me, man. Like, I was just selling out all my tickets. He's still, like, trying to get through 5 of them. And he was like, oh, you the SuperChef now? Look at you. You thinking that you the SuperChef. I was like, man, whatever. I ain't worried about it. Then I got to the Olympics. And we getting tattoos done. Everyone gets culinary. When they do these Olympics, they all get culinary tattoos from where they're at. Like, they represent where they've been at.
Right.
And I was like, what am I going to get? I was like, I don't know what to get on myself. And it was at night, we was in the kitchen. And one of the chefs was like, man, you're real cocky. He's like, you think you some type of super chef or something, don't you? I was like, there it is. That's the last time somebody going to call me that. Without me turning it around and using it for my own benefit. So that was it. Like, it was 2 times that someone had actually said it and called me it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to run with it. And it ain't like there's no chef with a name. Every chef's name is their actual name.
Right.
So it's always been weird. Well, it was for a long time because, like, why do you call yourself super chef? Like, why don't you call yourself Darnell Ferguson? I was like, this is the nickname I picked up. You know what I'm saying? But it's so cultural for us because we grew up with nicknames.
Right.
So it just fits into, like, how I was raised. But that's how I came aboard. But my barber, he kind of gave me a whole different, man, it's so funny with the name Super Chef. But that's how I got the name. Okay.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. People know you locally, regionally, nationally. How did you get picked up on the Food Network?
The story, a guy named Brad Harris, he's a journalist around town. And he came into the story on me called From Homeless to Owning 3 Restaurants. And that story went so viral. I think I forget it's called Urban something, the name of his website. But he did that story. I remember texting me probably at 6 in the morning. He said, hey, this is going to change your life forever. And I'm like, what you mean going to change my life forever? He was like, the U probably got over 1 million shares, and it hasn't even been 10 hours yet.
1 million shares.
Yeah, he just, the numbers he was saying was actually, he was like, this is going to change everything. I was like, okay. Next thing you know, our restaurants just got extremely busy. And from there, Rachel Ray, her producers had seen the story, and they were the first to call. And they, but when they called, so did Ellen and the Steve Harvey show. They all wanted me to give my story first to them. But at that time, I talked to a friend of mine, so I was like, I got to figure out who I should go with first. Because you can only tell it once, and I had to sign a deal. So I had to sign an exclusivity deal. And I was like, I feel like Rachel Ray's the best for me because her audience is the audience that I want to be in front of. Steve Harvey's audience, I feel like that's not the audience that I want to be in front of with my career. Ellen's, she has a very wide audience, but I felt like Rachel Ray's was a very strategic move for me. And I was like, most people who are going to want, I want to be on Food TV one day. They're going to see me from her because she's on there already. So I did the show. And I remember the first when I went to go do the show, they was like, oh, you'll be in the green room with the other athletes. So the other athletes here on that episode I did. I was like, okay, I can't wait to meet them. But they kept me in a room the whole day. It was a nice room. All the food and everything I ever wanted. I was like, why am I in this room all day? So I get out there, we started doing the show. And now I realized that they ended up surprising me with Emerald. So Emerald was surprising because he knew that he was the reason why I started cooking. So, and that's the reason why Rachel Ray started cooking too. So she's like, we got something in common. Emerald was the reason why we both started. Next thing you know, he comes out. And I'm like, oh, this is crazy. Like, that's why we couldn't bring you out of the room because he was in there. And I was like, okay. And then from there, Guys Grocery Games called when I got back. And it was really, everything you see from TV, the basis of it is that production company from Guys Grocery Games. They're the ones who've invested more in me than anyone has ever invested as far as TV goes. From the Thanksgiving challenge I did, the Tournament of Champions I did this March, all those are from that company. And they really just believed in me from the first time I was on TV. And I had already been practicing TV my whole life. I had a show on WHAS called From Simple to Super, where I would go out and show people how to redo their favorite meals. I had already shot my own web series called CookingIn10.com, where we shot like 98 videos in a weekend on cooking lessons in under 10 minutes. So my whole life before this, I had already been planning to be on TV. And so when it happened, I felt like I was ready for it. And now it's just like, now we're trying to get our own shows and stuff. So
I'm going to switch gears for a second. I see your shirt, 502. I see everything on it. You and I talk about social justice a lot. What does social justice mean to you?
Social justice to me is admitting that there ain't that much justice socially. So for me, it's just trying to have a voice that I've been ashamed of having for so long. You know, I've always been ashamed to say things that were true for black people. You know what I'm saying? Because then you seem like you're this guy. But it's just really like showing the gaps in the hole that make black people have such a hard time. Or people of color have such a hard time. You know, that most people don't think is true or don't think is real. But through conversation, I feel like people are starting to understand a lot more that it's not really justice.
Well, let me ask you this question. I know that you have a voice and people listen to you a lot. But do they ask you how you feel? So I'm going to ask you, how are you feeling about how things are right now?
I would say, I don't know, man. Sometimes I'm on fire. Sometimes I'm sad. And sometimes I'm mad. You know what I'm saying? And you go through those stages of grief that you have. But it's a little, I don't know, man. It's a little disheartening sometimes for me because you see the response from people who don't even care. Like, this is not real for us. You know, and I've lived it and seen it in so many times as far as like how it goes with police in different areas. But for me, it's such a day-to-day thing. Like, it's such a scary thing for me. It's like I told my wife, we was driving from Alabama to here and almost got pulled over at nighttime. I was like, this is the worst thing that could ever happen right now. Like, oh my gosh, I do not want to get pulled over. Like, it's just, that's not natural. That shouldn't be natural. And so for me, I'm just trying to do any and everything I can do to make sure I do my part.
Well, I ask you that question because I know you have kids. And I know you want to make things different for them. How is it raising your kids in the climate that we have right now?
It's very important for me to make sure that I'm teaching them and I don't let no one else teach them what to do. Even when they go to school, I try to make sure that I'm still not a motivational speaker. But I don't know, I feel like I'm a motivational speaker because I never had nobody talk to me like that. I never had nobody sit down with me and tell me the do's and don'ts, how you need to think, how you don't need to think. Like, no one ever told me that. I had to learn it on my own. So therefore, like, I'm just very intentional to make sure they understand what's going on. Like, that's why we put on a protest and had our boys out there with us, because I want them to see, like, man, like, it's so important that we are involved in this because it affects us. So for me, it's just making sure that I'm leading by example and making sure that I'm talking to them and I'm telling them, not letting them find out from TV.
Well, I know you do a lot of things leading by example, which brings me to becoming super. Tell me about your comic book, man. I know you're an author now, so tell me what promoted you or what made you want to do a comic book about yourself.
So I want to do this comic book because my message is for like 16 to and above. That's what my message is for. Like, that's what I usually mentor to. That's what I usually talk to the most. It's like growing young adults into that about to graduate high school years, I would say. So I was trying to figure out how can I relate to kids, because there's so much about life I wish I learned as a kid. And I was like, man, I do go to elementary schools and speak, but it's so hard for me because my message is like one of those ones you got to be listening to. And kids, you got to keep their attention so much. Right. So I was like, how can I relate to kids in their own language? And I was like, comic book. And I had a friend of mine who was always super optimistic about life. Like, he believes everything is possible, like he should. And he was like, man, you should write a comic book one day. So when he passed last year, I was like, I'm gonna write that comic book.
Right.
I was like, I'm gonna do it, man, because I need to figure out how to talk to kids without having to talk to kids.
Well, let me ask you this. You obviously have done a lot. You talk about being homeless, being incarcerated. Now you're a successful business owner. I did want to ask you this. You opened a restaurant in the middle of a pandemic. How is being an owner of a restaurant right now in the middle of a pandemic, how is that affecting you? How have you dealt with what we all have to face right now?
It's more stressful than people would imagine, especially for restaurants, because we're the ones that have to be the most cautious. Like, we're the ones that have the highest level of fear from people. So we have to take the most precautions. So therefore, we do things that customers don't understand why it's taking so long. They don't understand why is this longer than usual. Well, we don't have as many people in the kitchen as we used to. You know what I'm saying? And we just don't. It's just so unknowing. Like, every day is not like it used to be for us. So some days we're lighter staffed. That way we could try to have our servers make more money. And like, well, you don't have enough staff. Well, we had more staff yesterday. Didn't know people show up. So today we took it back. That way they could make some money. It's like it's a very tough fight because nothing's consistent right now. And then with the unemployment rate being so high, it's so hard to hire. It is almost impossible to hire. So even in our store in Ohio, man, we're trying to figure out, like, we need 12 line cooks to operate correctly. We have 4. And then they understand, like, well, why y'all close early today? Well, they've been here since 9 and it's 10 p.m. Like, they can't, we're either going to take longer to cook the food. Like, I don't know what to do. You know, so it's like we close the kitchen 30 minutes early. And they're like, well, that's not good. You shouldn't close the kitchen. It's like, I know we shouldn't. But we're not in the time to where it's normal for us. We only have 4 employees in our kitchen because no one else wants to work until after July is over with.
Right.
So it's so hard, and people don't understand what it's like because they're not in it. I think if they, from seeing this, they'll be like, oh, I didn't know restaurants were going through that. I didn't know they were so down in their kitchen. Yeah, everybody want to come back to work. You know, and my job ain't to go call unemployment and tell them. You know what I'm saying? My job is to focus on this place. So therefore, we're down in so many different areas that we weren't usually down in. And it's just so different. I talked to my man from seafood lady, everybody, man. Everyone's having the same issues. And it's just trying to maintain a good level of customer service and a good level of standards without having, it's like wanting to be a track and field star, but you got your ankle's broken this week. But you're still limping, trying your best to do it, but you don't have that, you know what I'm saying, you're not fully healed yet.
Right.
So that's where it's at, but it's like we got to open, man, because if we don't open back up, we will be shut down permanently.
Right.
So it's like people don't understand the catch-22 that we're in right now. So that's the hardest part, but we try to stay positive with it, try to put out a good product, and try to control what we can control.
Right. Well, I'll tell you this. I've been to your restaurant a few times. You've done some things at my house. I've seen you do a lot of catering. I know you well enough to know that you're not going to stay complacent. What's next? What's on the horizon that we may want to look at?
TV. I'm going to dominate TV one day. Remember this interview? I'm going to be the biggest star they've ever seen on Food Network.
Okay.
The biggest ever. Emerald is gonna be my best friend one day. Guy, I told him, I said, Guy is like Michael Jordan at Food Network. I'm gonna be the Muhammad Ali of Food Network. I'm gonna be the one that people want to follow for the rest of their lives, not just when I'm cooking. You know, like that's my mission. My mission, like even when we had a vision board, we wrote down 7, 8, maybe 10 years ago, our vision board we had written out. I said I want to have the most inspirational restaurant in the world. I didn't say I want to have the best, because that's interpreted by other people. But I said I want my restaurant to be the most inspirational one ever. You know, and I feel like we're on that path to be that, if we're not there yet. But that's just, my goals are different than most people believe. But I really want to touch TV. There hasn't been no one who looked like me on TV that hasn't just had one show or something like that. Like, my goal is to change everything and to bring other people who look like me up after I make it. That's why you'll see, I think four of my chefs have been on Food Network since I've been on there, because I've been on there and they've called and asked, hey, you got any other people I can get from you who are like you? Yep, I got him. Yep, I got her. Yep, I got him. Yep, I got him. Yep, so that's my goal, is to be able to go into TV, because that's also where my heart started at when Emerald was on TV. So one day down the line, I'll plan on having my own version of like Emerald Live one day, but obviously it's me, and it may be a band that's doing covers or something like that. But I've seen it ever since I was a kid. You know what I'm saying? Since I was a kid, I've seen myself on TV cooking. So that's where I think people one day will see me. They'll see me in the grocery stores on the on the cooking equipment they're going to buy. You know, like they'll see us tack into something that we haven't been able to get into yet.
Right.
You'll see me on cereal box. I won't be my face. It may be my little guy from my comic book. But that is really what I want to do. I want to change history, and I want to make it better for people who look like me, because it's hard. It's extremely hard in our industry.
Well, I will say this. I've known you for a few years now. We've done some events together. You've actually helped me put together something for some kids on Thanksgiving. I appreciate that. But I've never known you not to put your mind to something and not get it accomplished. So all the things you're talking about, I believe I can, because I see you talking about it. I can see it with you, man. And last but not least, I will tell you this: the nickname. You know, I wanted to go with Worldwide Webb, and never stuck for me. But SuperChef, it fits you, man. You're super. You do a lot of things, not just for yourself and your family, but you do a lot of things for the community. And I know a lot of people that respect you and appreciate who you are and what you do for them. So I want to say thank you for being super, not just to the people that come into your restaurant, but to the people that are outside. All those people that you touch, because you continue to touch people. I just want to thank you for being on the show today.
I appreciate that. And definitely, before we go, I think it's very important, because I get a lot of moms who come in and who ask me questions about how could I help their son, like who are like my age or maybe a little younger than me. And I don't think people understand how close I am to being where I was at before, and how close their kid is to being where I'm at today. You know, it didn't take me miraculously learning how to cook and me doing all these other things. Like, it literally came to me understanding who God was and who I am in his eyes. And then once I stopped doubting that, you know, everything changed for me. Like, I didn't become more successful because I focused on business. I became more successful because I focused on my relationship with God and who I'm going to be and how I'm going to be remembered.
Man, I can't say anything better than that. Man, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for watching another episode of Matter of Perspective. Join us next time where we have another guest. Thank you.